We're moving on to this story about Imran Khan. I talked about him a couple of months ago when the police had surrounded his house. Apparently, they believed that he had incited a violent protest. Now, he gave an interview after that, and he said that he was not the one to incite violent protests. Imran Khan, for those who are not aware, he's a former prime minister of Pakistan. He's also a former cricket player, apparently a very well-known cricket player. That's actually where he got his start. Well, believe it or not, Imran Khan is now arrested. So here we are. I think it's just about 2 months ago when I covered this, when they surrounded his house. So Imran Khan was arrested, apparently while I was on break, and they arrested him for corruption. Now, when I talked about Imran Khan last time, I told you that one of the things that he did do was he embraced populism as a leader, that he implemented some policies and ideas in Pakistan that actually helped the people. And he believed that because he created a new political party, that is the reason why he was being targeted by the military, by the police, why they were coming after him and they wanted to take him down. Before I went live tonight, it was reported that Imran Khan can now not run for political office for 5 years. So they wanted to stop him, and they did. And we're going to get into his arrest and what he is asking his supporters to do in Pakistan now. But before we do that, I think we need to go back so you can see a little bit of a background about Imran Khan, because the last time I talked about him, I did not go into his background. And I want to show you this because I think this piece is important. Imran Khan, even though he started to embrace populism and implemented some policies that helped the people, he did not come from a working class background. He actually came from a pretty privileged lifestyle, like, to be honest. He was famous. He knew famous people because of his profession as a cricketer. Is that what they call them, cricketers? Because he was a professional cricketer, but he was really good at cricket. And he hung out with celebrities. Everybody seemed to love Imran Khan until he got involved in politics and wanted to find ways to help some of the people. But who was he? Let's get into it.
Let's talk about Imran Khan, the former cricket star turned prime minister at the center of a political storm in Pakistan. He was kicked out of office last year, is now facing more than 100 legal cases, and was briefly arrested in May. It led to huge protests and violence. Khan says he's the victim of a conspiracy to force him out of politics for good.
What is happening right now is not because of me.
People in Pakistan are really divided over Imran Khan. His supporters see him as the only hope for the country.
Imran has basically become a prophet of change,
while his opponents accuse him of spreading lies and fueling a toxic style of politics.
This became a two-way fight of rhetoric of like good versus evil.
So who is Imran Khan? Why is he so divisive? And why is politics in Pakistan in such chaos right now?
One of the things I want to add too is you'll see this in one of the news clips I'm going to show you, is that some of his supporters really don't believe that Pakistan can actually go forward without him. Let's continue.
First off, let's run through Imran Khan's backstory. He was born into an upper-class family in Lahore and went to an elite high school. He studied at Oxford University in England, but it was his cricketing career that made him into a superstar.
Got to pause here because of commercial. Sorry. Here we go.
A very glamorous cricketer too. That glamour, of course, brought him to the attention of high society in London.
In the early 90s, he was hanging out with rock stars and royalty and married a British aristocrat. But he was also getting into charity work, and raised money to open a cancer hospital in Lahore in memory of his late mother.
Here's a cricketer, a public icon, trying to provide free cancer care in a country where this was not accessible for most people. And that then translated into a conversation he had about the role of corruption, improving governance, and then his entry into politics.
In 1996, Imran Khan launched his own political party.
Let's pause here for just a second. Who does that remind you of? Talking about corruption, wanting to help the people. And so he thought that by getting into politics, he could be the person to do that. Now, it kind of reminds me of some of the things that Bernie Sanders said back in the day, although Bernie was already a politician, right? But Imran Khan did something a little bit further. He created his own political party because obviously he realized the political parties that were present were not going to suit the issue that he had with corruption. Now, why do I bring this up? Because Imran Khan was arrested because they believed that he was corrupt, when corruption was the very thing that he was trying to fight against. Now, he does not believe that that is the reason why he was arrested. There have been other supporters that have come forward that said there have been other politicians that actually are corrupt and they're not arrested. They're still walking around. So what is it about him? Why did the police surround his house a couple of months ago? Why do they want him out of politics forever? And my belief is because he did embrace some of those social policies. We'll get into that in just a second. Let's go on.
Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, which means Movement for Justice. He styled himself as an outsider on an anti-corruption mission, but his political career didn't really take off until 2011. That's when he held 2 rallies in Lahore and Karachi. Tens of thousands of people showed up. He was promising to bring a new kind of politics to Pakistan. And 7 years later, that message helped him get elected as prime minister.
मैं ये आपके सामने ये प्लेज करता हूं कि इंशाल्लाह ये एक बिल्कुल आप मुख्तलिफ किस्म की पाकिस्तान में गवर्नेंस देखेंगे.
Now, until Khan came on the scene, Pakistani politics was dominated by 2 parties and 2 families. The Bhutto family, which is linked to the PPP, and the Sharif family linked to the PMLN. That's the party of the current Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif. For years, the 2 sides have been alternating in power, a pattern that Khan was determined to break.
To demolish what he called the grip of dynastic politics in Pakistan.
He's very popular among young Pakistanis who do not see the old guard as being representative of their ambitions and aspirations. He's also popular among middle and upper middle and elite classes.
Doesn't that sound familiar? Look at who he is popular among. Mainly the younger people, people who are middle class, people who kind of want that old guard style of politics to be pushed out. He started an entirely new political party, guys. I mean, we don't have politicians in this country, for the most part, that are brave enough to do that. The politicians that we have in this country that claim to fight for progressive issues, they don't want to start a new party. They don't even want you to vote for third party or independent candidates. They want you to stay within the Democratic Party, the party that you can't change.
Are of the view that Pakistan have been harmed by the politically corrupt elite for too long, and Imran is our hope.
Now, there's another layer in Pakistan's politics that you need to know about, and that's the military. Since Pakistan's independence in 1947, there have been several military coups, and generals have ruled directly for 33 years in total. But when there's been a civilian government, the military still plays a big role behind the scenes.
They have such a strong, influential meddling going on that no government in Pakistan really gets formed without their involvement.
And it seems that was also the case for Imran Khan, that the military was pretty influential in his rise to power.
This is something which is acknowledged by the military leadership of that time. People who have subsequently came out after the retirement and acknowledged and confessed that yes, we have helped Imran win.
And Khan actually sold himself as a candidate who could work with the military. They were seen as being on the same page.
The constant struggle and tension between civil and military establishments in Pakistan was something that people expected would end with Khan coming into power.
But it didn't. Here's what happened.
So here's someone who thought at some point that, yes, I can be a politician and I can actually get along with the military powers that be. I can make this work. Didn't seem to work out. Doesn't seem to work out in this country either.
So it's 2018, and Imran Khan's just been elected prime minister. It was actually a pretty contentious election, and his political opponents accused him of fraud. But Khan was popular, and for a lot of people, it felt like a fresh start. Remember, his big thing was tackling corruption, something he said was at the root of most of Pakistan's problems. So he went on a massive anti-corruption drive. Many politicians and government officials were arrested.
You would never see that here. Here's someone who was elected prime minister, and he went on to an anti-corruption drive where he arrested other politicians and government officials that were corrupt. You would never see that happen here. Never see that happen. This is one of the reasons I also believe why they don't want him in power anymore, why they don't want him to run for office. Again, at least he can't for the next 5 years if things remain the same. This is one of the reasons I believe, again, why they tried to stop him.
Khan's supporters approved, but his critics said it was one-sided and that he was only targeting his political opponents, though Khan denies that.
Order in the house, please.
Another criticism was that Khan's approach created a kind of vindictive and divisive political atmosphere.
When he made compromise a bad word, you were all in with Khan or you were anti-Khan for whatever reason, that was the conversation.
Khan brought with him an extremely divisive, and some would say hateful style of politics. Much of that reflected in the language that he used, haranguing his opponents and accusing them of being thieves and crooks.
Oh, God, no. How dare you call politicians thieves and crooks?
सिर्फ हम जिससे मफामत कभी नहीं करेंगे वो लोग हैं जिन्होंने पाकिस्तान की अवाम का पैसा चोरी करके.
You see, it all goes back to money. He said, we will never reason with those politicians who looted and laundered the Pakistani people's money. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with calling that out?
Now, the economy was a big issue when Khan was prime minister. He inherited a lot of problems, including a major debt crisis, and he had to deal with COVID too. But the bottom line was that living conditions for most Pakistanis didn't improve under Khan. Inflation soared and the value of the currency fell.
As the economic stress mounted, people sort of began questioning, what this hope and change mantra was all about. And I think that began to then erode his popularity.
That sound familiar, you guys? The whole hope and change, and then people's lives not really improving. Reminds me of Obama.
Overall, your democratic, your human rights, these things were being impacted. Politicians were thrown in jail, things like that. But economy was also being impacted. And along with these things, Imran's relationship with military also started fracturing.
Now, it's hard to know exactly how Khan's relationship with the military broke down because this is behind the scenes kind of stuff. But strains developed after a couple of years with Khan as prime minister. It seems the military wasn't happy about the way things were looking.
Oh, look at that. Even in other countries, the military calling the shots.
The economy was in bad shape. And on foreign policy, Khan seemed to be going his own way with a more anti-Western approach. There was a reported disagreement, too, over the intelligence chief, who was supposed to leave his job after 3 years, as per military policy, but Khan wanted him to stay.
It was kind of a straw that, if not broke the camel's back, it really made things irreparable from that time onward.
It's always been a marriage of unequals. Every time a politician or a political party has allied itself with Pakistan's military, they always get hurt by it.
By 2022, it seemed pretty clear that the military was pulling their support from Khan by standing back so the opposition parties could go after him.
And we'll stop there and we'll come out because I have two other clips I want to show. But that shows you that it's not just the United States. So even in Pakistan, the military, if they didn't like you and you were running for office, it was going to be difficult for you to win. So the military did like him in the beginning. And they said they were one of the ones that helped him get elected. Now, I want to dive into this current information now where he was arrested and he has been sentenced to prison. And this is coming off of 2 months ago when the police surrounded his house and they accused him of inciting protesters to go out and commit violent acts, which he said he had nothing to do with. So he has been arrested. Let's go ahead and dive in here.
Well, Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan has been sentenced to 3 years in prison. The court handed down its ruling in his absence for illegally selling state gifts. Khan's now been arrested in the city of Lahore. Legal experts say the conviction may end Khan's chances of running in elections later this year. After his
And that has already been decided. Before I went live, they said that he cannot run for office for 5 years.
arrest, the former Prime Minister released this pre-recorded statement.
मेरे पाकिस्तानियों, जब तक ये पैगाम आप तक पहुंचेगा,
My fellow Pakistanis, by the time this message will reach you, they would have arrested me and I will be in jail. I have one request from you, an appeal, that you do not sit in your homes quietly. Whatever I am doing is not for myself. I am doing it for my Pakistanis and for you, for your children's better future.
अगर
Let's pause here for just a moment. You see what he just did? Before they came to arrest him, he released a video to the people and told them, do not sit at home and just let this continue. He goes on to say more. This is actually a longer speech. You're not going to see the full speech, but it's a longer speech. And he mentions something about them. Don't be a slave to the system. So he sent a message out to the people, letting them know, look, like, this is not about me. I'm doing this for you guys. But don't sit back and let them treat you this way. And the reason why I think that speech is incredibly important is because, again, you would never hear any of the politicians that we have in this country say this. I think the closest we may have gotten to that was with Donald Trump in reference to January. But it's not like they were coming to arrest Donald Trump. This is a different thing. But you just wouldn't hear it. You wouldn't hear it. Bernie Sanders wouldn't say something like this after they cheated him. And the court ruled that the DNC was a corporation. So if they wanted to give all the super delegates away to Hillary Clinton, they could. Even Bernie Sanders didn't say to his supporters, don't sit at home and let them do you like this. You see what I mean? That's the difference. And I've noticed this with other countries. It seems like their politicians, for the most part, they seem to be more willing to fight, more willing to stand up. Here, they'll tell you they're fighting, then they just cower over and be like, okay, vote for my opponent.
आप अपने हकूक के लिए नहीं खड़े होंगे.
If you do not stand up for your rights, you will live like slaves. Slaves have no lives of their own. Slaves are like ants on the ground.
You hear that?
Supporters of Imran Khan have been protesting against his arrest in cities in Pakistan. In Lahore, people gathered outside his home, chanting support for the former Prime Minister. They called for Khan's immediate release from prison.
Imran Khan is a national hero who is the symbol of unity. He is the leader of this nation. He wants to save the country. Today they arrested him and set an example. This is what we are doing to our national hero.
Well, Kamal Khaider is live for us in Islamabad. Imran Khan's supporters already saying that they're going to be out on the streets. A significant day in Pakistan's politics.
Indeed, a significant day in Pakistani politics. We have reports that there have been protests in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. People are hearing the news. Of course, this does not go down well with Imran Khan's supporters. We have here with us the principal spokesperson for Imran Khan and his party, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, Mr. Rauf Hassan, to tell us about the circumstances of this arrest. What do you know about this?
Well, what I've been given to understand, that it was a rough handling. He was covered with a black cloth, and there were pushes and there were shoves.
So when they arrested him, it's not like they knocked on the door and said, "You're under arrest." According to his spokesperson, they covered his head with the black cloth. They were pushing him and shoving him, kind of like something you would see in the movies, right? Like that's what it reminded me of.
To be dishonest, requires a bit of intelligence, So even before the verdict had been announced, they had already posted a contingent of the police at his place. So they were already waited, like they knew what was going to be said in the judgment. So the moment the judgment was pronounced, they arrested him, and it was a very rough handling. Unfortunately, not only him but all the other personal staff, based at Zaman Park residence, were also taken into custody by the police.
What does this do for the party? What does this do for the upcoming elections? Obviously, Imran Khan is a popular leader, and his party has defeated the joint combined opposition. So what's the way forward? What is going to be your party's response now?
Well, long before Khan was arrested today, he had put together a mechanism to run the party in case he's arrested. And we all knew that he was going to be arrested. He most of all knew that he was going to be arrested. As a matter of fact, he was fully prepared to be arrested. So we have a mechanism in place, and we had our first meeting of the core committee today, and we have given out a call for peaceful protests right across. I shall share the statement that we've released, and you can see exactly what all is contained in that. So that core committee is now going to take decisions with consensus, and they will chalk the way out, keeping in mind the circumstances, that arise in due course of time. Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and pause there, and then I want to go into this next info I have here, because I do want to show you there were some of the things I told you I agreed with some of his positions, and then there were some where I was like, yeah, I don't agree with that position. Basically. So let me make sure I'm going to go ahead to that point here. I just want to make sure I'm queuing up the right part. I want to show you some of the things that he did. Not that one. Let's go to ideology. So this piece here, I think, is important. So this part here, during his government, Khan addressed a balance of payment crisis with a bailout from the IMF. He presided over a shrinking current account deficit and limited defense spending to curtail the fiscal deficit. Leading to some general economic growth, he enacted policies which increased tax collection and investment, and reforms were made to the social safety net. And I want to hover over social safety net for just a second, and I want to scroll up here. Because the Asas program is a social safety and poverty alleviation launched by the government of Pakistan in 2019 by the party of Imran Khan. Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, called it a key initiative towards a welfare state. It is aimed at uplifting the backward class, reducing inequality, and investment en masse. So you see this position right here, alleviating poverty. That was launched by his political party that he started. And this is what I was referring to when I said some of the things that he did was helping the people. And I felt like that's one of the reasons why he was a target. His government committed to renewable energy transition, launched a national reforestation initiative, and expanded protected areas, and led the country through the pandemic. His government committed to a renewable energy transition, launched the Asas program I just read to you about, and the Plant for Pakistan initiative, and expanded the protected areas of Pakistan. Then it goes on to say how he presided over the pandemic that caused economic turmoil and rising inflation in the country and threatened his political position. He enacted policies that increased tax collection and investment. His failure to revive the economy and the rising inflation rate caused him political problems. So I will say that, but I will also say that, again, I think part of the problem was the fact that, again, he helped the people, the social programs, the social safety net. And then I want to mention this part too, the foreign relations. This was the part I did not agree with, but even he realized it was wrong later on. In foreign relations, he dealt with border skirmishes against India, strengthened relations with China and Russia while relations with the United States cooled. In 2010, Khan said in an interview, "I grew up hating India because I grew up in Lahore. And there were massacres of 1947, so much bloodshed and anger. But as I started touring India, I got so much love and friendship there that all of this disappeared." So I think it was great that later on he realized like that it was not good for him to hate other people. And it goes on to say that Khan views the Kashmir issue as a humanitarian issue, as opposed to a territorial dispute between two countries, India and Pakistan. He also proposed secret talks to settle the issue, as he thinks the vested interests on both sides will try to subvert them. He ruled out a military solution to the conflict and denied the possibility of a fourth war between India and Pakistan over the disputed mountainous region. This part right here, he also came back that he didn't feel good about doing this in reference to foreign policy. He publicly demanded a Pakistani apology towards the Bangladeshi people for the atrocities committed in 1971. He called the 1971 operation a blunder and likened it to today's treatments of Pashtuns in the war on terror. However, he repeatedly criticized the war crime trials in Bangladesh in favor of those convicts. In August 2012, the Pakistani Taliban issued death threats if he went ahead with his march to their tribal stronghold along the Afghan border to protest U.S. drone attacks. Because he calls himself a liberal, a term they associate with a lack of religious belief. On October 1st in 2012, prior to his plan to address the rally in South Waziristan, senior comraders of Pakistani Taliban said after a meeting headed to the Taliban leader, Masood, that they now offered Khan security assistance for the rally because Khan's opposition to drone attacks in Pakistan, reversing their previous stance. His sympathetic position towards the Pakistani Taliban and Afghan Taliban, as well as his criticism of the US-led war on terror, has earned him the moniker Taliban Khan in Pakistani politics. He believes in negotiations with Taliban and pull out of the Pakistan army from the federally administered tribal areas. He is against US drone strikes and plans to disengage Pakistan from the US-led war on terror. And this is what I believe is another reason why he was targeted and they wanted to pull him out. Criticizing the U.S. military industrial complex, criticizing the U.S. war on terror. You have to remember those were not popular positions at that point in time. And that's another reason why I think they wanted him to go. Just something to think about. But yes, he has been arrested. He cannot run for office for 5 years at least. And his arrest is supposed to be for 3 years. We'll see what happens if his supporters try to rise up, but we'll see how it goes from there. Lana says, my dentist is Pakistani and confirms his story. There you go. There you go. The quantum alchemist said their parents and grandparents were just as corrupt, but at least smart enough to keep their heads on their shoulders. Interesting. Interesting.